Here we go. Well, here we are. Welcome everyone to Friday afternoon at the Manor. It's a delight again to gather. Every week is a great adventure. And just to share with you what we did have happen last week was a wee bit of comedy. Alison Marcaccini, who's our wonderful children and youth minister, was testing out the Zoom platform and didn't realize when she was testing it out, she shut down the entire platform at the same time, which is, we're reminded we live and learn as we go. And she didn't even know she had done that. And I was thinking, who else would have done this? And so, needless to say, we were able to check out and check back in. But I think the best part is the world didn't end, and we did make life continue. But I think it's going to be very exciting today. But believe it or not, this was going to be the last Friday of our speaker series until we decided to expand, and we're expanding on the expanding. So we're not only going to be going from now till the end of June, we're going to start up again next September, September to June, with a wonderful array of different theme speakers, which I think is going to be quite wonderful. We have someone who's plugged in called Zoom account. I wonder whose Zoom account is. Very generic there. So without further ado, I wish to welcome to our wonderful platform today our illustrious Jenny Blackbird, who's been to Manor Road before, who comes from the Centre for Indigenous Studies. Well, welcome, Jenny, and we're looking forward to hearing your wisdom and your insight. Here, oh, there's Deborah. All right, Deborah. Hello. How are you?
Hello.
Good to see you. I think you're old friends. Good.
Yeah, I had to come see Jenny.
All right. Very good. Very good. Good to
Plus,
have you.
I'm retired now, right? So I have a
Yes.
little more time.
I retired for the moment, right? As a
Well, kind of.
yes,
You know how that goes.
yes. Over to you, Jenny.
Okay, so Danse, Jenny needs kasun kihiwan Nation ochi. So I just said in Cree, hello, and my name is Jenny, and I'm from Kihiwan Cree Nation in Alberta. Actually, my late father lived there, and my mother is from Finland, but I grew up in this territory. So the dish with one spoon territory, which is oh my gosh, home to the Mississauga, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, as well as the Huron, and there are many different nations that have moved through here for such a long time. And now Toronto, si Toronto, is home to many different Indigenous nations and people from all over Turtle Island, from Central and South America, which I believe the people from those territories call Abiala. So we have many different folks that live here and work here, and I'm really glad to be living here and working here. And since it's not my territory, I always try my best to walk in a good way in terms of remembering that it is not my territory, to be more of a helper than anything. And that being said, my husband is Mississauga from Curve Lake, so it's his territory. And I work at the Center for Indigenous Studies for the Jiman Kahuya Kayak Indigenous Language Initiative Program, and those three words there. So Jiman is the Anishinaabe word for canoe. Kahuya is a Cayuga word for boat, and kayak is what many of you may know, a kayak, and that's an Inuktitut word. So the program that I work for is a language initiative, and I bring in speakers and presenters for U of T students, Indigenous community members, as well as anyone from the general public who wants to come and learn just a little bit. You can't really learn a full language in a 1 hour session, but it's always nice to have it as a starting point so people can come and just absorb and learn. And if people are curious about further language learning, I do have resources and I have a lot of networks that I can help connect people to. And I think the biggest thing I always tell people is, if you want to learn an Indigenous language, you really have to think about why. So it's about relationships. It's about what's the reasoning why I would want to learn Anishinaabe as a Cree person. Well, I live in this territory and my husband's Anishinaabe, right? And other people may work with different communities, so it's always a good reason to think about why we want to forge relationships. And so I'm really grateful that Deborah asked me to come to the church that one time to establish a relationship. And it's always nice to meet new people, and it's always nice to be invited to spaces to speak just on the tiny bit that I know, because I always have to remember I'm one person, and to remind you that it's always good to listen to other Indigenous voices. So if you ever have another speaker or another opportunity to hear another Indigenous person talk about their experiences, I think that's the best way to go, because I wouldn't want anyone to think that I'm speaking for everybody. You know, that's not the way I roll, and that's not the appropriate thing to say or do. And so I also work at Heart House. I'm cross appointed, and I work with their learning and community program. So we also bring in artists and speakers, and we do activities. And now that everything's online and virtually, there are more opportunities for anyone to just join us. So if you just Google Heart House Learning and Community, there may be some events coming up that the general public can take part of. We may do like a film screening or a speaker series. So please, by all means, check out the website and see if there's something that piques your interest. And there are so many wonderful things happening at University of Toronto with their Office of Indigenous Initiatives. I don't directly work with them, but it's really nice to see that University of Toronto is really wanting to make Indigenous scholars, students, and staff and faculty welcome to be there. And it's a big institution, and it's a big space that unfortunately Knox College was involved with training teachers to go into residential schools. And there was also the North Borden building, which my office is located in. When we were working in the office, I'm working remotely now, but when we were working in the office, my coworker learned that the nutritional experiments that were done on Indigenous children in residential schools, a lot of the people involved were through the colleges that were in University of Toronto. So it can be very bittersweet thinking about those things. Like, now I'm working in this institution, but the history has been really not pleasant. And always recognizing that when we're working with reconciliation, and we're thinking about the things that have happened in the past that have repercussions that are still happening to this day, is not to take on guilt, because none of this was your fault, but to work towards helping support Indigenous folks in their healing. So I think those are always the good things to look at. And for myself, I didn't go to residential school. My late father did. And because he passed away at a young age, I don't know what his experience was. I don't know what he lived with or what he lived through. So I don't really have a big connection to a trauma attached to, let's say, a church. Like, so I don't feel uncomfortable coming to speak to you. Whereas some people will be like, no, I don't want to be involved. And then other people from different Indigenous communities are very, very dedicated to their churches. So you will find different people have their own experiences. And it's always, once again, the best thing to do is to listen to them and honor their path, and honor the way that they believe and the way they live. So and so mostly what I do is, in my personal life, I do pray, and I do honestly believe and love the higher power. And we may say Kisemanto, Kichimanido, Kisheminido. So those are different ways of either Cree or Anishinaabe to speak about the great kind spirit. You know, you may have heard somebody talk about creator or a great spirit, you know. And this gives me chills to think about the great kind mystery, because that's where we come from. That's who created everything. And whereas you may use the name God, you know, that's very beautiful too. And I've always thought about the parallels of, you know, the water, the Noah's Ark, and the creation stories that many Indigenous folks in these territories have, those oral histories about the big flood. And it's absolutely incredible how it seems like we're all on a similar vibe, right? We just call it a different name. We just call a different way of thinking, right? And a different way of knowing. So nothing is incorrect. Nothing is, you know, one person may have a different viewpoint from me, but that's okay. That's totally fine. And whatever gives you the greatest comfort, I think that's so incredibly beautiful. And so when I was invited into the church, and Deborah tailored this really nice service for the strawberry ceremony, and it showed me the respect, it showed me the honor, it showed me the attention to detail in thinking how to link your scriptures to what I was going to talk about. So it's I think that's the best way going forward when, you know, non-Indigenous and Indigenous people work together. We have to find our commonalities. We have to find the things that bind us together as humans, because too often it's like, oh, I can't talk to you because you're doing that or you believe that, and that's not the way that humanity is going to overcome everything that is not so positive. And there's so much happening now with the pandemic and the people that are ill and the people that have passed, and that we need to stick together. And so a very good friend of mine, Amy Desjardins, had spoken to an elder, and this elder had said, I would like you to organize some people to do prayer circle and then expand it and expand it again. So we ended up launching this little prayer in a nice little spot near the Humber River. And it was just a little group of us socially distanced people with our special outfit. I'm going to say, I don't know if you have ever been to a powwow or you've seen a jingle dress, but the jingle dress is a healing dress. So there was 4 jingle dress dancers that were there, and we danced to kick off this cycle of prayer. And so Amy put it on social media. It actually made the news. And everyone all around the world has been invited every single new moon to pray for 24 hours. Because you know how the clock goes, right? So it's like midnight here and it's another time on the other side of the world. So they wanted to ensure that it was constant, continual prayer, no matter how you pray and what you do, because we need that unity. We need that unification of heart and mind, body and spirit. So someone may do their walking prayer. Somebody may do like very still sitting meditation. Other folks may do a rosary, you know. So it's all of it is so needed at this point in time, where we've had this full year, at least in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, of this lockdown and being at home and feeling disconnected. So oftentimes the thing that I do is I go for a walk and I pray. And that is my beautiful way of connecting, because I can talk to Kisimanto and say, we need this help. We need housing. We need food. We need more kindness, and we need more generosity, because there's so many people that are homeless or being evicted. So it's putting it out there. It's putting out that thought and being mindful of how I pray. I have to really think about that. I have to think about the offering instead of saying, oh, I'm going to pray for somebody and assume that I'm going to heal them. Doesn't work that way. It's actually the person that needs the healing when they have that inside of them, and also meeting the creator halfway. That's what I've been taught. So if I need something, if I want something for myself, I have to meet creator halfway. I can't just sit on my couch and go, oh, I want a better job. I want more this. But then I have to think about, what does more of this mean? Do I want more shoes? Do I want more clothing? I think I want more positive and more sharing. I want more generosity in this world. So how do you foster that? It starts with yourself, and you have to meet creator halfway. I can't be healthy if I'm going to eat potato chips all the time and then pray to creator, help me be healthy. I have to go for walks. I have to eat vegetables. I have to really live in that holistic way and really think about what it is that I intend, because prayer, there comes that intention. And I'm sure all of you have that feeling. I'm sure many of you may feel that way. You know, what am I praying for? Why am I doing it? And who is this going to help? So it's really nice that that elder had that thought and said, let's just do it. And I think I might put my jingle dress on soon, because I did that twice so far, and I think it need to happen again. And it's also we've passed the spring, the equinox, the change of season. So we wanted to touch on the change of season and how that affects us, and how many different Indigenous people honor that change of season. You know, there's a lot that you know, in the winter time, it's the time for storytelling. When there's snow on the ground, there's only certain stories that can be told. So those are like sacred stories, those are sacred teachings that elders or family members will tell to their families or children. And those are lessons. Those are really good lessons. And I come from a family that has many storytellers, and when they would travel pre-COVID, when they would travel to Toronto to be part of the Toronto Storytelling Festival, I would often get an email asking, Jenny, is there snow in the ground? Because if there's snow in the ground, we can't tell these certain stories. We have to change our programming, because if you tell certain stories at the wrong time, you're gonna call back the snow. And you can't tell trickster stories when there's not snow on the ground. So people have to be mindful of honoring that space, that time, that season. And then once the snow is gone, then we welcome back this glorious awakening of everything, all the plants, the animals, the trees, the grasses, the waters, everything, all the snow is melted, it's gone. And oftentimes people will prepare to do their in these territories, their sugar camp, their sugar bush. So they tap the maple trees, and they get that sweet water that comes from the trees, and that sweet water is medicine. And oftentimes people will just drink that before they boil it down. And oftentimes people have said that sweet water is good for diabetes. It levels out your sugar, it cleans you out. So there's many people who just, they take that and that's their good medicine. And then others will boil it down for their syrup, or they make the sugar. They make the maple sugar. So that's that sweetness, that reminder of the change of the season. And then the bears are waking up, because bears hibernate. So the plants are coming back, and the bears are sort of like the medicine clan. So when there's bear clan people, they're the ones that are also the protectors of those communities. So they will walk around the perimeter and they will make sure that everyone's safe and taken care of. But while they're walking around, they observe all the plants, they observe what the other animals are eating and what they're not. And then they know what plant remedies are good for what ailments. So these bears are waking up again and everything's coming back to life, and it's just such a wonderful time. And other nations may think about what's the good planting time. So often the calendars, because Indigenous people didn't have a paper calendar with the 12 months. They would go by the cycle of the moon. So there was 13 moons. There's always been 13 moons. And so the months would be named after the season changes. And oftentimes it would be like planting moon or budding moon. And then there's like frog moon, because all the frogs are in the water and they're singing back and forth. And then there's like the strawberry moon, so June. Odemen Gizes, so Odemen is strawberry in Anishinaabemowin, and Gizes is moon. Tipiscal Gizes. I'm trying to think. Anyway, so that honors the changes of the season, and it reflects what the natural environment is going through. So it's very important that Indigenous people know exactly what the months are and what their environment is doing. Much like anywhere around the world, because especially if you're relying on harvest, you're relying on planting, you're relying on hunting, you're relying on fishing. You need to know when everything is springing up, and these natural rules also help people to hunt at the appropriate times. And I have a coworker who used to go spearfishing, and he would talk about when he would fish, and he would know which ones not to spear, because he would look at certain the shape of the fish and go, oh no, she's got eggs, and I can't take that one because she hasn't put her eggs down yet. So it's just paying attention to the natural world. And I think that all of us could really benefit from reconnecting with the environment around us, and really honoring that. And there's different ceremonies that happen. Some ceremonies I don't know because I'm not part of those societies, and I'm not part of that nation, so I wouldn't be able to speak on that. But the ones that I have been part of is a fasting camp. So we often do one in the spring and one in the fall, and that resets us. Some people don't eat for 2 to 4 days and 2 to 4 nights. Sometimes people go longer. So it's very cleansing. Your body resets, and then you also have time to go out and be with your first family, which is all of creation. You get to lie on the ground, you get to lie on the grass, you get to be with the bugs and the rocks, and you get to watch the trees, and you just get to watch the sky, and just be part of that, and remember how much Creator loves us all. Like, Creator gave us everything we've ever needed. So we sometimes need that reminder that we're not alone. We're never alone. So it's a wonderful thing to think about, and just take part in. And so that, I think that for me right now, it's the hardest part of the COVID, because we can't gather like we used to. Normally I would be thinking about, going to a sweat lodge would be really nice, but I can't do that. And the sweat lodge is a dome-shaped frame made out of certain saplings, and they often cover it with tarps, blankets. Actually, I don't know. I don't think they wouldn't use plastic. They would use blankets and cedar. And on the inside, they would have a little fire pit, and that's where they place rocks that have been heated, and those rocks go in there, and then they pour water on it, and the steam rises up, and that's not only physically cleansing because you sweat, but it's very emotional and mental, spiritual, and whatever happens in the sweat lodge stays in the sweat lodge. So like a lot of us don't talk about what we see or what we experience, and it's, I guess, kind of like a sauna. My mom's side of the family is from Finland, so I grew up with the traditional wood burning sauna, which is very cleansing in itself and relaxing. So it's interesting to see the difference between those two ceremonies, those two spaces, and just the different way you feel when you come out. So there's many different ways that Indigenous people connect, but once again, I explore who's out there speaking about their experiences, and listen to what they have to offer. Yeah. And so was there how long do I have actually? Like, is it
We're not watching a clock. You're fascinating. And so sometimes we have speakers do an hour and then we have a part two, but we thought we'd give you two. I mean, you don't have to speak for 2 hours if you don't want to, but we didn't want to limit you. Let's put it that
yeah.
way. Okay? Because there's so many areas. I mean, you're just as you're chatting, to telling and speaking. There's a lot of areas that could certainly. I mean, we could ask. I can invite people to ask questions now if you like, or do you want to?
Sure.
Okay. So
Yeah.
then, 1,000 questions, 1,000 moments. So when you think of, I'm going to just start with myself. So it's interesting that U of T, it's interesting. I remember years ago going to BC, they actually have Faculty of First Nation Studies. And is U of T aiming to have a Faculty of First Nation Studies?
Well, they have a Center for Indigenous Studies, and right
Yes,
now it's an undergrad.
right.
So I think they're working towards having a master's.
They're, they're going in that direction. And one more question, but I won't hog the mic.
Mhm.
So is there a sweat lodge on site at U of T?
No.
Okay.
They're redoing the campus.
Right.
They're redoing King's College Circle, and they are putting in a ceremonial space, but I don't think that it'll have a sweat lodge because it's too in the public.
Right. And you want privacy. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
because U of T campus, like everyone walks through it all the time, it's really hard. Like these are
Yes.
the ceremonies that do require a little bit more privacy,
Right. Right.
and sadly, a lot of times, when people are curious, they don't know that it may be disruptive. So
No.
a lot of the ceremonies are held out of the city.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so so maybe we could develop an urban forest.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
thought for I'm sure many people have many questions. So what I'm going to do is because we have 12, that's a nice healthy size group. And so why don't people unmute, and I'm going to just remove the spotlight so I can see people's, and move it to gallery view so we can actually see people's hands. And so why don't we just, and I'll take numbers. So if you want to maybe turn your video on so we could see your hand, but if you want to leave your video incognito. Now, I see Debbie. Is that Debbie? You have your hand up. So we're going to start a queue of speakers. So Debbie, you have a question? Or is that Debbie have a question? You're muted, Debbie. And then I see
It's Peter that has the question.
Oh, sorry.
Peter has his hand up.
I'm reading the gallery wrong. So I'm still learning myself.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. Okay, so Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, mine is more of an observation rather than a question. I really enjoyed your story, Debbie. I mean, Jenny. Yeah. I also identify with the higher power. I was brought up Catholic, but I no longer identify with that religion, if you like. I changed almost 360 when in my 60s. So I call my higher power, sometimes higher power, sometimes creator. I call it creator. So it really resonated with me when you said creator. And I have been to a powwow on Manitoulin Island. It was very enjoyable. I didn't understand what that was going on. There was a lot of dancing. There was a lot of people wearing the jingling as you described. And I didn't understand what that was. I do understand it better today. Thank you for explaining it. And for me, my higher power is in nature. I feel closest to my higher power where not besides large bodies of water, a beautiful forest, beautiful garden. Maybe if I witness an act of kindness from another person, that's where my higher power is. So if I pray, I feel closest to that higher power when I'm in nature, not in my bedroom, not in my living room. So I really resonated with me, what you talked about. Thank you for sharing your culture with us today. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Jenny,
Yeah.
would you ever come back to Manor Road again? Maybe, well, not physically, maybe, and, and maybe speak on your jingle dress. I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
and then because I think stories, as you say, and remind us all, stories are very important, and they help connect us. That's very important.
Yeah, and it's interesting because well, I'm just gonna touch on Peter, the powwow.
Yes.
So many people, not everybody, and not every regalia style or outfit style. We never call them costumes,
No.
because costumes are what you wear for Halloween,
Right. Right.
and a regalia is it's an extension of the person that is wearing it. They often spend hours making it, or they commission another artisan to make the regalia. And oftentimes we are in prayer, so it's really interesting because we're in public and we're dancing with that intention, but there also is a spectacle aspect to a powwow. So it's kind of this fine line. So some people are just really great dancers. Some people are just, they can do such amazing things. You know, their stamina and their physical fitness is really important, but other people, it's personal. So it's always really nice when someone shares what their personal connection to their own regalia and their own dance style is. And the jingle dress actually does, it has a story that goes along with it. And for many of us, we learned it from other dancers, and it comes from one specific territory, one place, Lake of the Woods area. And it is actually tied to the Spanish flu pandemic, which a lot of us did not know until very recently, because it was a mystery illness. So when people talked about the development of the dress, it just said that there was a young girl named Maggie White who was really sick, and her grandfather wanted to help her, and he couldn't figure out what to do. So he had a dream of this beautiful dress, and he had the dress made, and they had a gathering, and they had a big drum, and they sounded the big drum. And the first time they put Maggie in the dress, and they had to carry her because she was so sick. So they walked her around once. The second time she walked with assistance. The third time she walked on her own, and the fourth time she went around, she danced. So this dress has healing power for the person who wears it, and also for the people in the powwow arena. So oftentimes when there is someone who's sick or someone who's struggling, they will go to the powwow director or the committee and give them tobacco, because tobacco is one of the medicines that not every Indigenous nation works with, but we use that for prayer, because it is one of the first medicines that was given to us by Creator. And it's not the commercial stuff. it doesn't have the additives and the chemicals. It's the natural plant that when you have it in your hand, your left hand, it's your hard hand, with your intention, and you ask someone for help. That's the way they do it. So they will often give tobacco and say, can you pray for so-and-so has cancer, or, you know, this person needs help. So they will give tobacco to each of the Jingle Dress dancers. We do a jingle special, and then we dance to specific songs. Like there's different song styles. So when we dance with the tobacco, I hold it in my left hand when I dance, and we pray really hard. Sometimes they give us a name. Sometimes people from the powwow spectators will come and say, I need help. Or sometimes people will tell me I'm very sick, or whatever it is. I never divulge that. That's between the tobacco, the person who's asked me, and me and the dress and creator. So then once we're done the dance, we all take that tobacco and put it in the sacred fire, because we know that when we put that tobacco in, the smoke brings up the prayers to creator, and creator sees that, and creator says, okay, there's work to be done. So it was really interesting that it was revealed last year. It was either last year or 2019 that the dress is about 100 years old.
Mm.
And that was the pandemic of Spanish flu that brought that dress out, and the healing power of that dress. And then there's the other ironic piece where the railroad, the Cross Canada, the CN, when the soldiers were coming back from Europe, who was traveling on the trains, and they carried that disease back to their homes. So that's why it was devastating. And then the other added history of the Plains people, the Indigenous people, the Cree, the Blackfoot, all the folks, the Soto, all the people that were living on the plains had to be removed to build that railroad. So it's like an extra added layer of sadness. And then the Chinese migrant workers that were building that railroad, and then probably labor of Black Canadians, African slavery descents from slavery. So there's lots of pieces that actually need to be healed. There's lots of pieces that there's always good use for prayer, and for those reconciliation, and for community building, so we can help each other understand these histories and these truths that many people may not know, or they may not really think about and go, oh my goodness, that's attached to such heavy trauma. And I crossed Canada with my mom when I was a kid by the train, and it was exciting. But then when I grew up and thought about it, I went, oh, this is like a layer of history and sadness. So there's, when you're learning these things too, like I said before, nothing was your fault, nothing was my fault. Please take extra care. If you do hear something that really jars you or makes you feel, oh, it doesn't feel good, please take extra care. Have a glass of water, have a nice deep breath, and understand that these are the things that need to come out, because there's so much that people don't want to talk about because it's difficult. But we need to power through it. And you need to remember that creator loves us all, and creator gives us challenges because creator knows we can handle them. Creator doesn't give you anything you can't get through, right? So whether it's something that's devastating, like the death of a relative or your own sickness, even if you're so deep in your sorrow, you can handle it. Creator give you everything inside of you. You just have to reach and ask for that help, and however that is. And when you have leadership, we in our communities, we look to elders. And so and when you go to a church, You know, you look to the leadership, you look to the person who takes the time to find the right words. And you have this knowledge, you have this love in your heart, you have these beautiful scriptures to look towards. And you take the best of that and then you push that out to help others. So that's what happens with our elders. Like, they may have, you know, a lot of oral knowledge or a lot of cultural knowledge, but yeah, some of them may go to the Bible. You never know. So it's all good. Like, it's all good, and you really have to. I just marvel at that. I think it's really wonderful how humans are.
Other questions for Jenny? Gary, over to
Hello.
you.
First, I've got a comment and then I've got a question. Peter mentioned the powwow up on Manitoulin Island. It was a couple of summers ago. And just as the tradition started, an eagle flew over the circle. And the chief, or I don't know the right word, said that was the best omen they could possibly have for this powwow. It was a very spiritual event.
Yep.
Really was. Now the question, this is going to be controversial, but I know you'll give us an answer. Why did the government ban some of the ceremonies? And I think one of them was the sun ceremony or
Sundance.
Sundance, yes.
Yeah. There was
Why?
so the government, because of a lot of the ugly reality of us being in the way, my ancestors being in the way of progress, and because they wanted to remove people from certain spaces, good land. Assimilation was one thing they wanted to try to do. They couldn't get rid of us. And so John A. Macdonald and his buddies created the Indian Act. So the Indian Act is the thing that basically made Indigenous people wards of the Crown, wards of Canada. So what we have is they put my ancestors on reservations because they wanted to keep track of everybody. My ancestors would have done what many Indigenous people do. They would have camped in one place in one season and then gone to another place for another season. So when it's cold, you want to go south. So they would probably travel to Montana. They would travel to below what the US border, US Canada border is now. And then in the summertime, they would come back up to, Alberta or Saskatchewan. So the government wanted to keep track and keep everyone in one place. And so they put in the reservation system and they did all those treaties. So they went out and they signed all these treaties. I mean, there was treaties before Confederation. There was through Wampum and a few other treaties that happened between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous, but treaties between Indigenous nations were long before European contact. So one of my ancestors was a signatory of Treaty 6, the treaty, and that that's a difficult thing to think about. But when you want to squash a nation, you put down their women, you put down their children, and you will try and take away their religion or their spirituality. And so they enacted the Potlatch Ban. So that's what it was called. It was called the Potlatch Ban. So it banned Sundance, horse dance, any other ceremony. And I think the West Coast people, I think that the potlatch is their ceremony. It's a big ceremony that, from what I understand, it's like the chiefs will give away their wealth to show how well they're doing. They share it with everybody, and it's a big ceremony, lasts days. So the Canadian government wanted to squash that. So they took away a lot because of that. They wanted to really depress us. And then they enacted the residential schools, which is another form of assimilation. And sadly, that was almost 100 years of really not being good to Indigenous children. Like, you've probably heard about what's happened. And so I just turned 50 last year. I have cousins that are younger than me that went to residential school. So
Wow.
this is if I had lived in Alberta, I probably would have been put in a day school or a residential school. And I see Debbie had asked about if my mom was, if I was 60 scooped. I wasn't. But because my mother took me to Ontario, that's how I wasn't scooped and I wasn't put in residential school. So I have I felt like I really ducked. I dodged a bullet, and I actually thanked her for saving my life, because that would have probably not been a great experience. But that being said, I have to support and honor my family members who did go through that. And the thing about that, the Potlatch Ban, the teachings and the language never went away, though, because people did that stuff in quiet. And I have a friend who's now a very well respected elder, and she attended residential school, but every summer she went back home. So her grandfather taught her everything. That's how they kept up speaking their language. And then every time before she went back to school, her grandfather would say, "You're only going to speak English, and you're not going to tell them that you can speak your language. You're not going to tell them what ceremonies we've done in the summer." So there are people who luckily lived with that at least some part of the year, or people who retained or regained it. There's been lots of people I've known who've gone to residential school, but they lost their language, but they regained it. And the I don't know if anyone here has ever seen hoop dancing, where people dance with the really colorful hoops and they do all these wonderful movements. It's storytelling. So it's basically telling you different stories of creation and whatever their story is. So my cousins, the same ones who asked me about if there's snow on the ground when they come to tell stories, they the first time I heard the story about hoop dancing, I cried, because my cousin had said, because of the Potlatch Ban, and I forget what the ban was in the United States, they had very similar laws. So once those laws came into play, the people who did the hoop dancing, they would dance with they would have willow hoops. They would have these beautiful willow hoops. They would go to remote locations. They would hide in caves. They would hide way, way far away from anyone knowing what was happening. And they would teach these dances to the younger people. So that's how they retained, what they did to pass on. So there was a little bit of positive that happened. It's not all bad. I mean, it was definitely not good, but there was a few people who really had that in them to keep going. So that's so when you see, if we get to go to powwow anytime soon, if you see those dances, cheer for them. And often it's children who are going out there and they put down a blanket, and people are encouraged to give them $5 or whatever, and they take that money and they split it with the other hoop dancers. And so it's like, you want to encourage that 3-year-old who's really doing it, who's really learning it, and they're going to be such a strong adult, and they're going to teach their kids or their cousins or their nephews.
Well, Jenny, every path you take us down, you take us to another crossroads and another trail to blaze. And I'm sure there's other questions from people, and anyone have that. And there's Susan Johnson. All right, Susan, over to you.
Yeah, what's always struck me is how the Europeans always seek to fight nature, whereas the original people of any country, really, they know how to work with nature. And I'm wondering I think there are some programs where we're finally asking, okay, how do we do this? Sorry.
It's okay, we can wait.
Is there another question?
It's
One
too
second.
common, eh? Everybody's phone's going
One
off.
sec.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Just have you got any advice for us?
For going back to or supporting that.
How to quit fighting nature, basically, because
I think some good things are to find out locally what you can do in terms of retaining the natural flora and fauna, and also being educated on what companies and corporations are really not being so kind. Because I know it's like there's a certain company that bottles water
yes.
Right.
that that wanted to like take all the water from a certain territory just so they could bottle it. And then there was Tiny Township that they have some of the cleanest water, a spring, the
Really?
most beautiful water. You could just drink it. You just put a cup and drink it.
Right.
Drink it out of your hand. Somebody wanted to put a dump on that spring.
Wow.
So many people, and this is great. This is like solidarity in action. Indigenous people from that territory, that area, and lots of non-Indigenous people banded together, and they camped out at that spot, and they stopped the dump from going in. They stopped it, and that's a really great example of people just saying, you know what, doesn't matter where you're from, doesn't matter what you look like, we have to protect this water, because if they put a dump there, what is that going to do? And then another corporation is going to come along and go, oh well, we could put toxic waste, like they want to put toxic waste in Lake Huron. So it's trying to find all of the information and then writing to your MP, signing petitions, calling people and saying, hey, this isn't right, and we do need to take care of the earth because there's only one. And and I think informing each other, like doing as much reading as you can, or when you have a video chat with somebody, say, hey, this is what's happening. And it's yeah, that's good. Definitely, Debbie, thank you in the chat saying that, picking up garbage, it starts simple, and then spending that time whenever you can, at the park or something, or going on a hike, or going to a trail, and just spending time there, and really often thanking it. That's
Exactly.
what
Yes.
yeah, that's what I've done before. It's like when I was running through High Park, when I lived in High Park, and I'd be like, wow, what a great day, thank you, and you stop and you hang out with a tree.
Well, you know what they say, I don't know where I heard this, but trees, we draw, I'm not sure what it is, some kind of special power or aura from the trees. If you're feeling sad, then you should go down and sit amongst the trees and draw their energy. So I heard, I don't know where that comes from, but I think it might be Asian, in Asian culture, but just something that stayed with me. I feel that sense when I go down into the ravine where the bush is. So
Every culture has that story. Now, I'm sure there's other questions. I see Gary. You've been taking notes, Gary.
No, I haven't been taking notes.
So Gary, there's an exam later, and we're going to grade it high. Come on.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just curious, is there a certain person within the territory who is the healer, who has all the knowledge of how to assist people that are not well?
There are several. there's different people who definitely know how to work with plant medicines or with other ceremonies. And there is a facility called Dodum Canonsa. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It used to be at St. Clair and Young, and that facility it's part of the, I know I'm gonna mess it up, because Indian Affairs has changed their name so many times. I think it's the AANDC. Anyways, it's basically like the language is outdated because I still have an Indian status card.
Wow.
Go figure. The Indian Act, there you go. They don't update that stuff. So it used to be Aboriginal Affairs. Like, it's all over the place. It's
Right, so you don't pay taxes, aren't you lucky?
yeah, no, I do pay taxes.
Yes.
Oh, you do pay taxes.
I do pay, yeah.
You know what? They could at least award you no taxes. Like, why
Yeah.
should you pay taxes on the land that they took away from you?
Yeah.
I
And
mean, I'm not they, we
Yeah.
took away from you.
And it's
You know.
we do have a identification card. Like, status Indians who are registered have an identification card, and it literally says this is to certify Jenny Blackbird is an Indian within the meaning of the Indian Act. So I have my identity defined by a card, but it gets me the 5% off the PST.
Right.
If I shop, and yeah, that's not enough. And my treaty money, so we don't get money just handed out like candy. I mean,
No.
what a life that would be. Because a lot of people actually do think that. They're like, oh, you get everything you want. No.
Are you kidding? I hear there's more tuberculosis. There's a tuberculosis outbreak in.
There probably is, yeah.
Yeah.
We get
in the
$5
north.
a year.
Right.
So I get $5 a year treaty money. So I work full time. I pay taxes. So these are always very good opportunities. Thank you for asking, but they're very good opportunities for non-Indigenous Canadians to know, because sometimes we do get faced with that question or hostility. I've actually had times where I've gone to the store and I pull out my status card and say, I don't pay a portion of this tax. And I've actually had a cashier say to me, oh, well, when the HST comes in, what are you going to do? You have to pay tax like every other working Canadian.
Oh my God.
Right? So I looked at her and I said, hey, I got something to tell you. I said, I work full time. I volunteer in my community. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do any drugs. I don't even smoke cigarettes. I'm a really busy person and I do pay taxes. I said, talk to my accountant. And I said, you know, for what my family has been through, do you think taking $1.50 off my purchase is enough to compensate for abuse, genocide, genocidal tactics, removal from our traditional territories? She hung her head and she punched it in. And I contemplated for 1 second. I thought, should I go talk to her manager or let her sit with this? And she packed my stuff and I said, thank you. And I thought, I hope she went home and Googled it.
Yeah.
Because that right there, it was a big opportunity for me to just say, it's on you.
You created a good teachable moment. Yes.
Yeah. And you know, it's some days I'm like, water off a duck's back. Other days I'm so tired and I just kind of go, no, you're gonna have to get your manager. And then I talk to them and I try to find the kindest way, because I find that that's the easiest way to get a message across, because people are already scared of Indigenous people. They're already like, oh no, they're going to be mad. They're going to be angry at me. They're going to be like, oh, you took our land. We just want to live and we just want to have good relationships. Like that's what it's about. That's what it comes down to.
You know what? I was really agitated in grade 7 and 8 history, because you know what? I just wanted to stand up for our Native peoples when, you know, we were going through our history lessons on Canada. And it was like, as soon as I started hearing some of this stuff, you know, I just wanted to protest, you know, and That's why I failed history in 2 years.
There you go. So do people have some more questions? No, we're good. Okay. So Jenny, well, do you have a wisdom we can take forward?
Oh my goodness. Just keep learning, keep listening. And if there's anything that comes from Indigenous knowledge, you know, any elder or community member that you speak to, because not only elders hold wisdom, children hold wisdom, youth hold wisdom, people with disabilities, people who are never really listened to, they have a lot of insight for the things that others miss. So there's always room for everybody to be heard. And I would advise you to just keep learning, you know, and keep those things in your mind, and always remember that we're just human beings. There's my friend Clayton Shirt. He's a really awesome community member, knowledge keeper. He doesn't like to be called an elder, but sometimes he's considered an elder.
Right.
I really respect and admire him. He's a really great husband, father, grandfather, you know, brother. And the word, he always says this, the word Anishinaabe, you know, when you hear Anishinaabe, it really means human being in that language. And he often says, like, we are in that literal sense, all of us are Anishinaabe. We're all human beings.
Right.
Then when you think about all the different Indigenous groups, you hear, you know, Inuit. I think that translates to the people.
Right.
Ilnu, the folks, the Mi'kmaq people. I think that translates to human.
Right.
I could be wrong, so but there's so many Indigenous names for their own nations that remind us of that we're all just human beings. So we can all learn from each other. We can all really make changes. I really think that, yeah, writing your MP, talking to your MP, like call your MP, call your local, like call them, just, hey, let's chat about this. What can we do? There are communities in Ontario that have not, Indigenous communities that don't have clean water. Why is that happening?
That's happening all
Call
over
them.
Canada.
Call them. Just give them a call and say, so what are you going to actually do? What do you, what are the steps that you can take? And, you know, me as an Indigenous person, I don't mind paying taxes for that. If I know the taxes are going to go actually help people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I don't mind sending my money to the government, as long as I know it's not funding some MP to go on a weird trip somewhere for leisure. I want to see that children are being educated. I want to see that everyone has clean water. Seniors are taken care of. I want youth programs for youth. Like, those are the things we need to do. We need to tell the government what we want our money to do. So if we keep pushing them, maybe there will be change. Maybe if we have enough people saying, you know what, you don't really need to make that much money, Mr. MP. Take a pay cut, for crying out loud. Like, I know what do you really need? What do you really need other than a roof over your head, food, a vehicle? You don't need to buy a new car every year. You don't need to have a mansion in Forest Hill. Like, it's not necessary. So whatever we have, we can share. And I'm going to share this one book with you. I can send the link to purchase, but this it's going to be backwards.
Actually,
Nishnawbeg, This Is Our Territory by Doug Williams.
Hold that up for a second. What I'm going to do.
Screenshot. So Mississauga, and he's an elder from Curve Lake. And this is his book on his oral history that he learned. And it's so important that he put this into writing.
I'm just going to take a picture of that 1 second.
Yeah.
Good. Very good.
Just
Okay,
wrote
good.
it out.
All right,
And
let's go ahead.
yeah, and so I think it's good when we do have a physical book, something to read, something to refer to, and know that he's sharing his wisdom with all of us because he wants us to know this. He
Right.
wants us to know just a little bit about the territory and about what his elders taught him. And this documented history goes back to the late 1700s.
Wonderful.
Oh,
So
You know-
can you imagine the oral history, how far back that goes?
yeah. Can I ask a question? Do you mind? Okay. So now I'm going back to 7-8 history. Is habitant, is that
The French word.
an offensive word?
A French word?
No,
Um,
an offensive word. Offensive.
Yeah, well, it's French.
Well, but it means habitant. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, so I always struggled with why that would be offensive, because you are the habitants, well, the habitants of Turtle Island, right? So I could never associate why habitant would be so offensive. I know
I
that's
think-
just something we should think about. You know what I mean? Because to me, I would think, well, we are First Nations people. We did inhabit the land. So I'm just trying to figure out, it's just a simple word, but I'm just trying to logically think, like, why?
Well, Debbie, you're referring to something from history where that was the word French people used
Mhm.
when they came. So it goes back to colonialism, so to speak. And
Right.
so I mean, but yeah, I mean, it just meant inhabitant of the land. That's it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
did you have,
I think the more offensive term would be sauvage.
oh yeah, I heard that in Hearst, Ontario, at a public school. I couldn't believe it. I mean, this was probably about 30 years ago. And the word les sauvages, and I said, "Oh my gosh!"
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like savage? Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
that is offensive.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, very
That's
bad.
the one. That's the
Or-
one. And
or-
it's a lot of the because the church kept really great records. And when people were doing their genealogy, I have a friend who did her genealogy because they'd always heard that her great grandmother was Indigenous. And she thought, oh, I want to find out exactly where from. So they got these records and it said sauvagesse.
Wow.
And she called me and she goes, that was a weird feeling looking at that. They didn't even have the dignity, the respect to say, well, how do you call yourselves?
Right.
But so it's one of these things that some people really, they hold on to. I don't know. It's like, it's a weird thing, but I wouldn't use that word.
You are amazing. I like
Yes.
listening to you.
Oh, well, it was really great to see you here.
Well, thank
Thank
you,
you so much.
Jenny. Thank you, Jenny. Now, Susan, you want to give us a thank you and
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you come again and tell people about our program. And Jenny, I hope you'll be able to come to Battle Road again, either virtually or in the flesh. We look forward to hearing from you again.
Yeah.
thank you, Jenny. So just
It'd be
remind
wonderful.
everybody, next Friday is Good Friday. I think many people had an idea of that, and so
Oh, yeah.
we're taking a pause. So two weeks from now, actually, what we're having is a real treat. We're having Anne Lafrari and Liliana Bechtold. They're two U of T students, and so for their research project on human geography, they've been doing, I believe, 12 weeks of exploring the neighborhood and especially integrating conversations about the shelter at Roehampton. So it's going to be great to hear their insights and learnings and have actually been plugging into some of our Friday Afternoon the Manor speaker series. So it's going to be a great gift and honor to celebrate that. And so out of this, they're doing a presentation on March 31st. I'll share people that link But again, Jenny, a gift to hear you, and certainly we'll look for that book, and we'll look forward to having you come back again. So we'll say, take care, everybody, and have a
Thank you.
great day.
All right,
Bye-bye.
thanks,
Thank you.
Jenny.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Good to
Bye.
see you.